Yes, the sound of champions. What's going on, folks? I am here once again. I am Dominic Barnes, the alleged host of the show or whatnot. And here today, I will be giving you my top 5 handheld games. And with me is a very special guest. Haven't did one of these in a very long time.
Way too long.
A man of many names, and he has a new one this time. Once again, Mr. Mike Titan. What's going on, sir?
Oh, nothing much, man. Nothing much, man. Due to some legal issues and thinking that I need to make myself more marketable to the Caucasian audience, decided to change my name. Just took my first name and put the last name Titan at the end because it sounds like awesome. Like when you think of Titan, you just think of like big mythical Greek guys just tearing up stuff. But yeah, it's nice and simple and easy to say.
I would also think that you got it from the game Titanfall, but that is a story for another day.
Actually, I got it from the Titan class in Destiny, but tomato, tomato.
Hey, you got the word Titan in it. You know what I'm saying? That's all that matters. As long as you didn't get it from the Tennessee Titans, then that would be horrible.
No. To me, they're still the Oilers.
Oh, good job, sir. So I figured with the handheld game countdown, I need an expert on this field, and I figured you would know a lot of handheld games, so luckily you agreed to do this list, so I would like to thank you for that, sir.
No problem, man, no problem. With my list, I pretty much based it off of older handheld games. Like I think the most recent handheld game I have on here is from 2004. Main reason I did it is because when you told me about the list and I was thinking about it, I was like, well, there's so many good games that came out like on the 3DS and the PSP. The majority of those games you can play on the home console version. So these games either originated from like a handheld or they were pretty much made for the handheld. Like I think maybe most of these games I have on my list you can play on like, Wii U virtual consoles, PlayStation 4s, and Marketplace and stuff like that. But if you go back to when they originally released, they originally came out like on your PSPs, your Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, stuff like that. So pretty much the reason you would buy said handheld console to play that game.
I agree with you, sir. I did take that similar approach, but I did kind of cheat on one of my games, which would be my number 5. But before I get to that, let's go ahead and start with you. What is your number 5 handheld game, sir?
All right, so my number 5, I have never been able to say this name right ever since I've looked at the name, and I've watched a couple of videos and reviews on it. Luminous. Yes, Luminous. It was released in 2004 for the PSP. This game pretty much is like, I'm going to say it's like a rip-off of Tetris, but they did it in a nice, articulate, and eclectic way. Big words right there. Pretty much you got music playing in the background, and like the blocks that you have falling pretty much pulsate and react to the music that you play in the background. Well, the thing about this game that differentiates from Tetris is like, say you have like, blocks falling. So you have like a big square falling. If you have it in Tetris where there's space under the square, that space stays there. But in this game, the blocks fall to match whatever blocks are underneath it. So that's kind of cool when you try to fill out the blocks and get your stuff low. They have 4 different game modes: your challenge mode, time attack, puzzle versus CPU. Pretty, basic game modes that you come with puzzle games. But I just like this game because it pretty much recreates the puzzle genre with a nice little style and flair for the new kids of that era when it came out in 2004.
The new kids. I like that, sir. Now, my number 5, which I alluded to, I kind of cheated a little bit, was The Walking Dead Season 1 on the PlayStation Vita. Now, I didn't really just play a lot of games on the Vita because, after a while, most of the games I could play anywhere else anyway. But the reason I chose The Walking Dead was because, one, I love The Walking Dead, and considering who made the game, which made the Sam and Max games and, stuff like that, which was also phenomenally underrated in my opinion. But, The Walking Dead on the Vita, it came with all the episodes I already unlocked. On the systems and on your phone, like you had to wait for them to release. months at a time. But on the Vita version, it was already unlocked, and it came with the download, with the DLC as well. So
Mm.
you had the full experience right from the jump. Now it did kind of lag a little bit here and there, but that's to be expected. It's mostly a console game, to a handheld game, so that was to be expected. But I mean, as far as the game go, storytelling was great. I don't want to kind of go into the story because there'll kind of be a lot of spoilers involved, but
Mm.
I will say that pretty much everything that happened in the game, you had control over. Whatever happened,
Mm.
it's your fault. So if the bad happened, is because you went that route. Something good slightly happened because a lot of good didn't really happen, but
I don't know.
yeah, you was the reason for that, and you
Mm.
kind of felt for Clementine and everybody in the story. So for me, my number 5 would be The Walking Dead season 1 on the PS Vita. What is your number 4, sir?
Oh man, I didn't know that came out on the Vita. Poor
Yeah,
Lee. Poor Lee. Uh,
man.
my number 4 is a game I haven't personally played, but anytime I hear anything about whether it be handheld gaming, it actually came out for mobile games a couple of years ago. It's been pretty big on there. Is Final Fantasy Tactics. Now, this game was released for 2003 for the Game Boy Advance. It originally was on the PS1, but they ported it over to the Game Boy Advance to give people something to play on there. It's been, like I said, it's been remade plenty of times. I think it's like going for like $15-$20 on the Google Play and iOS store, and it's actually one of the top selling games on those stores if you actually go up and look for it. But it's your typical Final Fantasy fanfare. You play as a character, you go through the game. It's turn-based strategy, pretty much typical Final Fantasy fare. One thing that I noticed that I didn't know that I played in a game that actually was kind of made from that game, Bravely Default, is the job system, which pretty much is how I can explain this is that you pretty much have, in Bravely Default, you have pretty much 4 blank characters. So they're pretty much, they have their own styles and personalities, but as far as like powers go, you can give one dude a mage, you can give one girl a fighter, you can give the other girl a tank, you can give the other guy a ninja. So in Bravely Default, there's like 24 classes. They pretty much took that system from Final Fantasy Tactics, where you have your party, and let's say, in most RPG games, you have the main character who's a guy or a girl. It's mainly a guy. He usually has amnesia, and he's usually like the all-around character. Then you have his love interest or the girl of the group who's usually the healer, the mage. Then you'll have a mixed number of characters. You'll have like the big brawny guy who's a brawler. You'll have like the other girl who's like a ninja or a samurai or whatever. In this game, you can mix and match all those. So if you want to give the guy a healer and just make him heal people, revive people, you can do that. You want to give the girl the brawler or knuckles or 2 swords or axe, you can do that. You want to give the other guy black magic or make him a healer or a time mage, you can do all that. So that's something that I like that they had in the game that they put in countless other games that came out after it.
Ah, okay, good choice. Yeah, I heard a lot about that game, but I can say I personally didn't play it. But yeah,
Me
good.
neither. I just stuck to what everybody else stuck to, Final Fantasy 7 and 8.
Hey, can't go wrong with that. My number 4 was on the Game Boy Color back
Hmm.
in 2001, which would be Mega Man Extreme. The first one, they made 2 of them, but I like the first one a little bit better. Like I said, released in 2001. Mega Man or Rockman, as
Hmm.
they know them in other places.
Hmm.
Came out on the Game Boy, and it was pretty much Mega Man X and Mega Man X2 just combined into one game.
Ah.
So pretty much what they did is took all the best stages and the best boss fights for those 2 games, combined them into one, and they did it really, really well. Now, story wise, you literally don't get the whole full story until you beat the game on extreme mode. So you got
Hmm.
to go through. There was no easy. You had to go through normal, hard. I think it was like very hard, and then extreme mode. So. And it was cool to see that, considering the whole history of Mega Man and stuff like that. But the thing that I liked the best was Zero. Every time he showed up on the screen, his theme music was just on point. Like the theme song that they made for Zero was just on point. You know, it made it seem like he was just the man, which he is. He deserves a lot of respect in the Mega Man universe, but he doesn't get it. But that's a story for another day. But I mean, like I said, I mean, Mega Man Extreme for the Game Boy Color was a very good game, and it's probably one of the highest rated Mega Man games on the handheld system. So for me, Mega Man Extreme 1 is my number 4. What is your number 3?
That's cool. It's funny that you say that because I actually watched a video maybe like a week ago. I can't remember the name of the channel, but they pretty much went over like the timelines of the Mega Man games.
Right.
And they said there's like 2 parallel timelines because in like there's like the original one with like Mega Man, Dr. Light, Dr. Wily, and Roll. And there's one that takes place like 100 years after that where like somebody rebuilt a robot to look like Mega Man, and then after that with like the X series and Battle Network and all that stuff. But yeah, I forget who said it, but that's kind of funny that you said that. But my number 3 is a classic pretty much to anybody that you ask at a Nintendo. My number 3 is Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, released in 1993 for the original Game Boy, the big fat gray one. It was yeah, the brick pretty much. It was supposed to be, it started off its life cycle as a port of the Super Nintendo, A Link to the Past, but during its development, they kind of saw the promise it had, so they just made it its own thing altogether. It's your typical old school Zelda, over the top. You move from room to room, fight baddies, try to solve puzzles, get heart pieces, stuff like that. Fun fact that I did not know about this until I did some research on it. This is one of the few games that doesn't take place in Hyrule, and it actually doesn't have Princess Zelda in it.
Thank God.
Yeah. The story of the game is pretty much like Link is trapped on this island, and he has to get off of it for some reason. I don't know. It's I don't know. I've never really paid attention to much story in Zelda games besides Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask for the 2 days I played it, then I quit because I couldn't stop the moon from crashing into me, and I was like, you know what, screw this game. I'll just watch playthroughs of it later, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, Link Awakening. If you ask anybody who's an old school Nintendo head, they'll tell you this is probably one of the best handheld games that comes out because it was one of the earlier games in the Legend of Zelda series, and it just showed new gameplay, all the mechanics of starting out the game with nothing and then slowly leveling yourself up to get like the boomerang, the bombs, the little claw shot thing, or whatever stuff they had in that game. But yeah, that's my number 3, Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening.
All right, my number 3 was on the PSP, and it is the Power Stone Collection for the PSP. Now, for those that don't know, what Power Stone was fighting game on the Sega Dreamcast, considering the Dreamcast pretty much flopped in 2000, 2001. That was pretty much it for Power Stone. You didn't see it again. So when the PSP came out, come to find out, somebody loved it so much that they decided to put Power Stone 1 and 2 onto this little PSP, and fans like me can rejoice. Now, it's kind of hard to go into Power Stone because it's pretty much a multiplayer fighting game. And story-wise, it really doesn't make sense, but who cares because it was just that fun. But to me, they kept everything that made it great on the Dreamcast and implemented it even better on the PSP. Even down to the graphics, it still looked good. It didn't lose, a lot over the years because I think it came out in 2006, I want to say, somewhere in that time frame. But I mean, between the characters and Power Stone 1 and 2 still held up to this day, and the AI was still fun, to fight against and stuff like that. So, and it was still fluid, with a 4-character game like that on the PSP with the stages, shifting and doing all this other stuff. It was still fluid. It wasn't a lot of lagging, which I was very impressed with considering, like I said, everything that was going on. So for me, my number 3 is the Power Stone Collection And this is where it's gonna get funny at number 2. So I'm
Mhm.
not even gonna say anything. I'm just gonna throw it to you. So what's your number
All
2?
right. So I don't know if whoever's watching this, if y'all saw one of the older videos we did of the countdown. I think it was the PS2
PlayStation
game.
2, yeah.
So we had the same game. I think it was like number 4. We both had Resident Evil 4, I think, or something like that. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. We must be mentally, psychically linked to something. So we both have the same number 2 on our list. This is literally, this just happened randomly. I sent him my list a day before this. He sent me his list, and I was like, oh, you got this number 2. The number 2 on our list is gonna be Tetris. Now, everybody and their mamas heard about Tetris. Tetris, in my opinion, pretty much, I guess, started the puzzle genre in handheld gaming. Came out for the original Game Boy in 1989. The original puzzle game, I mean, it's you literally just fit blocks together. You try is you get more blocks down, the game gets fat. I mean, I can't really explain it no more than that. It's just Tetris. There's been plenty of reiterations. I mean, it's on mobile phones, handheld consoles, home consoles, cell phones. You can download it on your computer and play it. I mean, there's pretty much not that many platforms that has like games on it that you can't get Tetris. I think there's been the other stuff like Tetris Attack, which is kind of one of the newer
Yeah.
ones that's out to try to add different game modes to spice it up and stuff like that. There's even been themed Tetris games, like I think there was a Star Wars Tetris game that came out like when one of the original 3 movies came out for promotion of that. But yeah, I mean it's pretty much Tetris. There's really nothing more I can add for that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. There's really no premise to this game except put the stuff in the slots, put it where it
Mm-hmm.
goes. Now, it's simple, but it was challenging and fun at the same time. Now, even as a kid, where your patience is real short, I can't
Mm-hmm.
even think about how many batteries died while I was playing Tetris. And like you said, I mean, mothers, grandmas, aunties, uncles, like Tetris is a generational game. No matter how old you are, everybody knows about Tetris. Until this day, I cannot get that freaking song stuck out of my head. The
Mm-hmm.
doo, 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 doo. I cannot
Mm-hmm. The best
get that
theme
out of
song
my
ever.
head. It is. And so, I mean, like you were saying, plus I think, Street Fighter had the Super Street Fighter little puzzle, that little iteration of it. So there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of knockouts to Tetris just to kind of add a little spice to it. But I mean, yeah, like I said, we did not share list people. We literally just found out that we had the same number 2, like before we even did this not too long
Mm-hmm.
ago. So great minds just think alike. That's the only
Mm-hmm.
way that I can
Exactly.
describe it. Now, our number 1 is obviously not going to be the same. But for number 2, we both have Tetris. You're welcome, old school fans. You're welcome. But with that being said, let's go to the honorable mentions and what you got for your honorable mentions.
For my honorable mentions, I try to keep this short, so I only had 3. My first one is Golden Sun, a RPG game that came out for the Game Boy Advance. It's pretty much, your typical RPG game, but it had a very good story to it. I believe you play as this kid named Isaac. You wake up one morning, go to do some work around your town, and then somehow a volcano explodes or a meteor hits your town or something. And I think like everybody dies or something like that, and then you got to go find out why everybody dies. But it's literally one of those games where it's one of those grind fests. Like I think I got to the final boss. I was like a level 58, and he was like a level 99, and I just stopped playing the game because there was no way I was gonna be able to beat that boss. Because when it comes to me in RPG games, I'm mainly playing for the story, so I really don't. Depending on what game it is, I'm not gonna sit there and do all the extra stuff. I just want to get through the story because that's what I
Okay.
bought the game. So when I get to end games in RPGs, I'm nowhere near the level cap or like whatever the next level is. I'm probably like a good 10 to 15 levels below it because I just blast through the game. But that's Golden Sun. Another one, Dragon Ball Z: The Legacy of Goku. Now this would have been in my list if I didn't feel like my number 5, Luminous, was a better, what's what I'm looking for, a more impactful game than this. This is pretty much the first one that came out for the Game Boy Advance, I believe. Pretty much tells the story of the Saiyan saga. I believe it's Saiyan and Cell saga of Dragon Ball Z. If you were mildly cartoon fan, you know the Saiyan and Cell saga for Dragon Ball Z. But the way they did it is that it was pretty much like an overhead beat 'em up, whereas you would play as Goku, you would literally walk around overhead view and you would shoot key blasts. You would, have a button to punch, have a button to grab, and then it was just a really well done game for that time period. Granted, now they have, the Raging Blast, the Tenkaichi, all the other stuff. I think Xenoverse is the newest Dragon Ball Z game that's about to come out. So they have stuff that holds up better to time than that does. But just for that time period, and because I personally played it, I felt like it deserved an honorable mention. Now, the last one, which I'm not going to lie, when this game came out, I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I was scared to death to play it. But I played it anyways, was Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Castlevania games because I'm not really into Dracula and all that vampire-y stuff. I like the story. I actually didn't know that Dracula was originally, from what I've understood, Dracula was originally a Belmont. He was like one of the first Belmonts, and like he sacrificed himself to save his clan. And then his son becomes Alucard, and then Alucard's son teams up with Alucard to take out. It's a whole bunch of.
Wow.
Yeah, it's long. It's pretty much the Belmont family. Pretty much just has a screwed up family timeline. But thing about Dawn of Sorrow that I didn't like was I was like on a car ride to like Austin or something when I was with my family, and I was playing the game, and I was at the boss, and I lost the boss. And I'm like, oh, okay, so the game's going to be game over. I'm going to play him again. Well, it was, but there was a little cutscene after the game where I lost, and my character became Dracula, and I had to fight my partner, something like that. I don't know. That just kind of messed with me mentally with that game. I was like, all right, I had to put this down for a few hours. It's like, so I lost, and you become Dracula pretty much. But pretty much it's your typical Castlevania side-scroller. Go from room to room, fight bosses, collect power-ups, fight even cooler bosses, get even cooler power-ups. It's a typical Castlevania game, but that was also my number 3 for honorable mentions. And those are my 3. What do you have for yours?
Well, I have 3 as well, because, why drag that on? Number 1 would be Road Rash for the Game Boy Color. I mean, hey,
it's
Road Rash. Yeah, it's Road Rash. There's not a lot to be said about Road Rash. It's Road Rash. My next 2 is actually both games that was on the Game Boy Advance, and the first one is going to be Duke Nukem Advance. Now, everybody knows I'm a huge fan of Duke Nukem, and considering when the last one came out on PlayStation 1, kind of skipped the PlayStation 2 era. So, it went from PlayStation 1 and then, another one came out on the Game Boy Advance. So, years after anticipating another Duke Nukem game got me excited. It was pretty much the sequel to A Time to Kill, I want to say. But, it did everything well. Duke Nukem was still Duke Nukem. And my number 3, which I was actually going to put in my top 5, but I didn't, but it's Metal Slug Advance. Now, as a person who kind of grew, I grew up in the arcade era, so I was used to, going to grocery stores and going to arcades and seeing Metal Slug. I still remember the Metal Slug. It was like Metal Slug, and it was like a soccer game in one in one arcade. I don't know where they thought about that at, but, I always played Metal Slug, so I was used to playing Metal Slug, when it came out on the Game Boy Advance. It was like 3 Metal Slug games. I can't remember which ones it was in it, but it was 3 Metal Slug games, and they're all Metal Slug is that side-scrolling, action-packed, literally shooter. You can literally just hold the B button all day and just scroll to the right and then just shoot. So. But, as a kid, mindless cartoon violence and stuff like that, Metal Slug Advance was, another one of my honorable mentions that was this close to making it to the countdown. But with that being said, what is your number 1?
Okay, my number 1, if you know anything about handheld games, you will know why this game is number 1. Now, technically any game from this series could possibly be number one. The reason I chose this game, I'll give you this in a second. My number one is gonna be Pokemon Silver and Gold. Now,
Okay.
like I said, I based this game off of games you can mainly get on the handheld console. If you want the story or quote unquote story driven Pokemon game, not that Pokemon League, Hey You Pikachu, all that other crap, you got to play it on the handheld. So this game came out in 1999 for the Game Boy Color. Now, my main thing for liking this game is that you play as a new character. You don't play as Red or Ash anymore. You play as, I think they called him Gold or whatever, something like that, depending on which one you got, Gold or Silver. You pretty much got two games in one, because once you beat the main story, you beat the Elite Four, you unlock the Johto region. So pretty much you play all the gems from the first game. And there's been some little changes, like Gary's now the leader in Viridian Gym after Giovanni was pushed out. Apparently Cinnabar Island, the volcano exploded and destroyed the island, so you got to go in this cave to fight Blaine. What else? I think that's really all for the changes. There may be a couple of minor changes that I can't remember right now. But there's that. And then also the grand finale, after all that, you done pretty much beat, 16 gems, beat the Elite Four, beat your rival. You get to face Ash at the top of Mount Silver in his level 81 Pikachu. I would never forget.
Ooh, good Lord.
I would never forget when I got up there and I was like, it's go time. Only one thing, there's only one negative thing I can say about this game. So if you played any of the newer games, like the ones in the Game Boy Advance, like Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Black, White, Silver, XY, and you go back and play this game, you will hate this game because the movement is so slow in this game. It's like, because in the newer games, they have a run button now. So it's like, okay, I can just run around. In the older games, there wasn't no run button. You just had to wait till you got your bike. And even that, the bike just moved. It moved faster. It wasn't necessarily like, 10 times faster. It was maybe like 2 times faster. So you got where you need to go twice as fast, but it was still fairly slow. And then the text dialogue boxes just took so long to get rid of, especially when you had those mandatory things. You got to talk to people like Professor Oak, your gym leader, Nurse Joy. I would literally just be pushing the A button trying to heal Pokemon, and it would take me like 3 minutes just to do it. It's like, oh, yes, and then you would mess it up and push B, and you got to push A. Besides all that, it was just an amazing game. Literally any game from this series could have been on here. I was going to say yellow or red or blue because they were the originals, but I felt like Silver and Gold improved on the original and gave you more value because you literally got 2 games for the price of 1.
Hey, can't argue with that, sir. You can never go wrong with a Pokemon handheld game.
Mm-hmm.
Console Pokemon game is a whole different story. I'm looking at you, Pokemon Snap. I'm looking at you. But, yeah. Hey, very wise choice. Now, for me, my number one was a PSP game. I kind of look biased. I got a lot of PS
you
games.
Do. I was about to say that. Like, man, you got like 5 PSP games on it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, don't judge me. But I actually bought the PSP handheld of this game, which is God of War Chains of Olympus, which was like, I still remember when they announced this game, I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of like, it came out right after God of War 2, so it was after God of War 2 and before God of War 3. That's when the game came out. Now, story-wise, it was actually a prequel to God of War 1, and it took place 10 years before that. So you kind of saw Kratos before he was just fully angry. He was still an angry Spartan, but, you kind of had a lot of interaction with, his daughter. I don't want to give it away, but basically in one scene, you kind of go back to, like, where you actually kill her, and then you end up in this field, just a field of grass, and it's his daughter just right there in the middle of the field, and, like, people are trying to kill her, but you got to protect her. But the messed up thing is you lost your powers. So you got to find a way to protect her with no powers and stuff like. It really made you kind of look at Kratos as a sympathetic figure, considering how it all happened. So, you kind of look at him at a different light. Now, as far as the fighting goes, they really stuck true to, the system counterparts, the combos and the magic and stuff like that. The only thing, well, the main thing I did not like was the lack of the second analog stick. Because, you know, on the PlayStation 2, the right analog stick is so you can dodge and roll out the way. PSP didn't have that. So you kind of had to use, like, L and R, and then the little, you know, the little
Yeah,
skinny
thumb pad.
analogs. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was god awful, and I died so excuse me, so many times trying to dodge out the way because that's what I'm used to.
Mm.
And so when you playing God of War, when you used to play on the PlayStation 2, and then here you got it in your hands, you like, oh crap, I forgot, I can't dodge like that no more. But you know, as far as all the enemies and the fights, now the one weapon that I wish they would implement in, well, there will be no more God of War games most likely, but that I did wish they would have expanded more on was the Gauntlets of Zeus, which is kind of like these just YouTube Gauntlets of Zeus, God of War Chains of Olympus. But I mean, like I said, it was made by the Ready at Dawn team, who made the Daxter, you know, the Daxter game on PSP. You know,
Mm.
for those, you know, from Jack and Daxter, for those who don't know. But you know, so they pretty much took everything and just implemented perfectly. There wasn't a lot of loading screens, almost none actually. You know, consider everything you can do on God of War, that's pretty freaking impressive. So, you know, between that and the smooth frame rate, the countless violence that never ended, and can't forget about the threesome mini game that I'm not gonna go into. But you know, it's just, you know what I'm talking about, sir. But
Poor vase. That poor vase.
yeah, man, that poor base, man. But I mean, like I said, all in all, I was just really impressed by God of War Chains of Olympus on PSP. Like I said, I bought the all red Kratos edition
Mm.
PSP, so that should let you know how big it was for me. So for me, that's my number one. Any closing remarks, statements, concerns, sir?
Nah, not really, man. I just say I think we both had pretty good lists and nice wide variety of gaming games on here. And yeah, man. I mean, Kratos, Pokemon. How can you go wrong with a list like this?
Yeah, you talk about total opposites. Yeah, if Kratos sees a Pokemon, ain't no telling what he'll try to do to it. But with that being said, I am your host, quote unquote, Dominic Barnes. You can catch me on Twitter at FreshSnipes21. And with me here, as always, that guy with many names. I'll go ahead and let you close out yourself, sir. Promote yourself.
Yeah, man. It's Mike Titan. Find me on Twitter at Mike Titan _. Check out my YouTube channel, Mike Titan 50. I upload mainly sports gameplay, but I have different stuff like shooters, RPGs, things like that. And I just want to appreciate you for having me on and look forward to doing it again.
Yes, we will do it again, sir. And I knew that promo was about to get serious because you did the Birdman hand rub. That's all
Yeah,
that needed to be said. Yeah, man. So yeah, you can find you'll be able to watch this on Google Plus, on the Scoop's YouTube channel, which is the Scoop. Follow the Scoop at Tweet the Scoop, and we will see y'all next time for another countdown. Peace.